When people think of Dirty Harry, they remember the scowl, the .44 Magnum, and that now immortal line, "Do you feel lucky?" But behind the iconic moments and gritty dialogue lies a vault of strange, surprising, and downright bizarre stories. From near arrests during filming to seagull attacks and secret whistle tracks, the production of Dirty Harry was as wild as the film itself. Therefore, if you thought you knew everything about Harry Callahan and his world, think again. Join us as we reveal 20 facts that reveal the chaos, quirks, and controversy behind the movie. Number 1. Eastwood insisted on doing dangerous stunts himself. Clint Eastwood wasn't just playing a tough guy, he insisted on being one. During the tense climax of Dirty Harry, there's a scene where Harry climbs aboard a hijacked school bus as it speeds down a San Francisco road. The stunt looks dangerous because it was. Most actors would have used a double for something like that, but Eastwood waved off the idea. He believed doing it himself would give the scene a sense of realism that a double just couldn't deliver. It wasn't about ego, it was about commitment. The crew was visibly nervous. The bus was moving fast enough to make a misstep lethal, and the roof wasn't exactly grippy. Eastwood later admitted that once he was up there, he realized how slick it was and how quickly things could have gone wrong. But he didn't flinch. He maintained his balance, delivered the scene, and gave the audience a moment of pure adrenaline. It wasn't the only stunt he handled either. Throughout the film, Eastwood took pride in performing most of his action scenes. It added to the authenticity of Harry Callahan's grit. When you see Harry running, climbing, or aiming that .44 Magnum, you're not watching a Hollywood illusion. You're watching Eastwood, fully committed to the role, risking real injury to make sure the character felt real. Number 2. The Scorpio actor practiced screaming in public parks. Andrew Robinson didn't just show up and play a killer. He went deep, and he went weird. To get into the unhinged mindset of the Scorpio killer, Robinson would walk into Golden Gate Park at night and practice screaming. Not just regular yelling, but blood-curdling, guttural, wild screaming that would echo through the trees. He wanted to explore the extremes of fear and chaos, to loosen up any inhibition that might hold him back on camera. What he didn't expect was how terrifying it would be for anyone else nearby. Locals started reporting a deranged man lurking in the shadows. Park patrols were dispatched more than once. What they found, instead of a threat, was a classically trained actor preparing for one of the most disturbing villains in cinema history. Robinson later joked that the character might have possessed him a little too much. The strange preparation paid off. His performance as Scorpio felt uncomfortably real. The screams, the twitching, the emotional instability. It all came from a place he had deliberately unearthed. The cast and crew noted how eerie it was to watch him transform from a soft-spoken actor to a full-blown psychopath. If you found Scorpio disturbing, that was no accident. Those unsettling park sessions gave the character a raw, animalistic edge that couldn't be faked. Number 3. A literal earthquake delayed one scene. Not everything on a movie set can be controlled, especially when you're filming in earthquake-prone California. While shooting a rooftop scene for Dirty Harry, just as the crew was setting up a shot, the ground started to rumble. At first, everyone thought it was a passing truck. Then the lights shook, camera rigs wobbled, and someone yelled, "Is this a quake?" Yes, it was. It wasn't a massive one, but it was enough to throw everyone off balance. Crew members scrambled for safety, and the cameras were quickly powered down to prevent damage. The actor playing the rooftop jumper was already in place, nervous enough without Mother Nature adding a new layer of danger. Eastwood, ever the unflinching pro, reportedly stood calmly during the tremor and muttered something like, "That'll add some tension." The delay wasn't long, but it reminded everyone how unpredictable on-location filming could be. When you're shooting on rooftops and cliffsides instead of controlled studio environments, nature sometimes decides to join the cast. Ironically, the added stress only amplified the scene's atmosphere. Everyone was a little more on edge, a little more raw when the cameras rolled again. Sometimes the city gives you a gift, even if it's a shaky, terrifying one. That day, the quake didn't ruin the movie, it added to its pulse. Number 4. Dirty Harry was blamed for inspiring vigilante crimes. The impact of Dirty Harry didn't stop at the box office. As the film swept across theaters, it also stirred controversy in the real world, especially among law enforcement and moral watchdogs. Soon after its release, news stories emerged about people attempting to take justice into their own hands, with some quoting lines directly from the movie. One man in Texas pulled out a handgun during a robbery attempt and growled, "Do you feel lucky?" before disarming the criminal. Another claimed he carried a .44 Magnum because of Clint. This wasn't the kind of legacy Warner Brothers had hoped for. Critics pounced, accusing the film of glamorizing vigilantism. Eastwood and director Don Siegel insisted the story was fictional and deliberately exaggerated to provoke thought, not to encourage citizens to become armed enforcers of justice. But that message didn't land with everyone. The blurred line between entertainment and inspiration alarmed some city officials and media figures. They worried that the movie was turning angry civilians into imitators of Harry Callahan. Whether those fears were justified or overblown is still debated, but Dirty Harry hit a nerve. It wasn't just a movie, it was a mirror, and some people saw themselves reflected in it. The unsettling part? Some were ready to take action. Number 5. Real detectives followed the crew. Because Dirty Harry was shot primarily on real San Francisco streets with minimal permits and plenty of improvisation, confusion was bound to happen. What the crew didn't expect was to be mistaken for real criminals. On more than one occasion, as they scouted sketchy neighborhoods or filmed tense scenes without clear signage or cordons, they noticed unmarked cars slowly trailing them. At first, they assumed it was curious locals. It wasn't. It was actual law enforcement keeping tabs on them. Some off-duty or undercover cops had seen actors casing buildings or simulating gunplay and thought they were planning something real. In one instance, a camera operator was questioned near a back alley where he'd been filming test shots. He was wearing all black and carrying unusual gear, a tripod, but no camera mounted yet. It looked suspicious, really suspicious. The irony was rich. A movie about a rogue cop was accidentally triggering real surveillance by real cops. Once authorities learned it was a movie shoot, the tension eased, but not before some awkward explanations were made. Eastwood himself found it amusing and a bit flattering. "At least it looked authentic," he reportedly quipped. In a strange twist, Harry Callahan's gritty realism was so convincing, even the real cops couldn't tell where the movie ended and the streets began. Number 6. Eastwood's gun-fired blanks. So loud, people fainted. When Clint Eastwood pulled the trigger on his iconic .44 Magnum, it wasn't just movie magic. The gun used on set fired real blanks, and they were incredibly loud. During one shootout scene filmed on the streets of San Francisco, the sound of the blank round echoed off nearby buildings with such force that several bystanders ducked for cover, thinking it was an actual shooting. One woman standing near the production collapsed after the blast and had to be carried off by paramedics. The sound had startled her so badly that she fainted on the spot. This wasn't an isolated incident. The .44 Magnum, even when firing blanks, had an explosive pop unmatched by most prop weapons of the time. The crew was eventually forced to provide bystanders with earplugs and warnings during certain scenes to prevent further accidents. Clint Eastwood himself admitted that the sound could be overwhelming, even when it was expected. The raw intensity of the gun's noise became a part of the film's mythos. When Harry Callahan says his weapon is the most powerful handgun in the world, the audience doesn't need convincing. The sound alone made that claim feel completely believable. It was more than a prop. It was a sonic signature of fear and authority that no one on set forgot. Number 7. The Scorpio actor was almost recast for being too pretty. When Andrew Robinson first walked into the audition room for the role of Scorpio, producers were skeptical. He was clean-cut, handsome, and carried himself with the calm grace of a theater actor. On paper, he was everything the role was not. The character of Scorpio was meant to be erratic, unsettling, even grotesque. Robinson, by contrast, looked like someone you might cast as a professor or a politician. There was serious talk about recasting the role. Some executives felt that he lacked the visual menace needed to make audiences uncomfortable, but Don Siegel saw something in him that others didn't. He asked Robinson to perform a scene cold, without direction. What followed changed everything. Robinson delivered a chilling monologue, marked by sudden outbursts and wild-eyed instability. Everyone in the room went silent. By the end of the reading, there was no doubt. The man in front of them had undergone a transformation. That pretty face had turned into something twisted and unpredictable. It was unsettling precisely because it came from someone who looked normal. That contrast added an extra layer of horror to Scorpio. Robinson didn't just look the part, he redefined it. The casting gamble paid off. He delivered one of the most disturbing villain performances in film history, all because the team dared to look beyond the surface. Number 8. A priest tried to get the film pulled from theaters. Not everyone welcomed Dirty Harry with open arms. One San Francisco priest was so disturbed by the film's violent content that he launched a campaign to have it pulled from local theaters. His argument was clear. The movie, he said, glorified vengeance and sent the wrong message to a city already struggling with violence and crime. According to his sermons, Harry Callahan wasn't a hero, but a dangerous example of what happens when we lose faith in justice and take the law into our own hands. He wrote letters to newspapers, contacted city officials, and even tried to organize public protests outside theaters screening the film. While his efforts didn't succeed in banning the movie, they certainly drew attention. Local news outlets covered the controversy, and audiences turned out in even greater numbers. As often happens, the more something is condemned, the more curious people become. The priest later admitted that he never managed to watch the entire film. He walked out halfway, unsettled by the scene where Harry forces a confession from Scorpio. To him, it wasn't just fiction. It was a dangerous blueprint. Ultimately, his campaign was unsuccessful. However, his concerns were echoed by others, proving that Dirty Harry was not just entertainment. It was a cultural flashpoint that forced people to confront what justice means. Number 9. The prop department lost the gun temporarily. The most iconic weapon in cinema history nearly vanished without a trace. During a lunch break in the middle of shooting, someone noticed that the .44 Magnum was missing. At first, everyone assumed a crew member had moved it. But when the prop team checked their inventory, the gun was gone. Panic set in almost immediately. Losing a key prop is one thing. Losing a powerful-looking firearm in a public space is another entirely. As crew members fanned out to search, word came that a tourist had been seen picking it up and walking off. He thought it was a replica or part of the set. He'd been snapping photos and decided the revolver would make a great souvenir. Security was dispatched and a full-on chase unfolded through a nearby alley. The man was eventually stopped and the weapon recovered, unharmed. He was bewildered and insisted he meant no harm. Still, the incident rattled the crew. It was a reminder of how real everything looked and how quickly something could go wrong when working in public. From that point forward, the prop master kept the gun under constant watch. Clint Eastwood reportedly shook his head and muttered that it was the first time someone had tried to steal a gun from Dirty Harry and lived to tell the tale. Number 10. The original Scorpio drove a bright yellow Volkswagen. In one of the earliest drafts of Dirty Harry, the Scorpio killer drove a bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle. It might sound strange now given how chilling the final version turned out, but the idea was to make him look harmless. The writers thought it would be creepier if the killer appeared completely unthreatening at first glance, almost like a children's entertainer or a college student. However, once production began and the storyboards came together, everyone realized that a yellow beetle made the character look a little too cartoonish. It clashed with the film's gritty tone. Imagine Scorpio stalking victims or pulling off a hijacking while climbing out of a car that looked like it belonged in a Saturday morning cartoon. The idea quickly lost steam. The Beetle was replaced with something more neutral and forgettable, which ironically made him more terrifying. A nondescript vehicle allowed him to blend in, to vanish into the city after a killing spree without drawing attention. This small change had a huge impact. It's one of those production decisions that seems minor but ultimately shapes how we perceive a character. Had Scorpio kept the sunny little car, he might have come across as quirky or absurd. By scrapping it, the filmmakers preserved the unsettling realism that made him so unforgettable. Number 11. Robinson couldn't whistle, they had to dub it. One of the most eerie things about Scorpio and Dirty Harry is the way he whistles, especially during the playground sniper scene. That soft, tuneless sound gives the killer a disturbingly casual vibe, like violence is just part of his daily routine. But here's the twist. Andrew Robinson, the actor behind Scorpio, couldn't whistle. Not well enough, at least, to match the haunting tone the director wanted. When the crew first rolled sound, Robinson tried again and again to hit the right notes. But no matter how hard he worked at it, his whistling came out too clean, too rhythmic, or simply too off-key to use. Don Siegel didn't want perfection. He wanted something that felt wrong, slightly off, something that would make the audience uneasy without knowing exactly why. In post-production, they brought in a musician to lay down a whistle track that matched the mood they were aiming for. It was then layered carefully into the scenes, synced with Robinson's facial movements. The result was seamless and unsettling. To this day, most viewers assume Robinson committed the act himself, but like so much in filmmaking, what you see and what's real are not always the same. It's a small behind-the-scenes secret that proves just how much effort went into making every moment of the film disturb the audience just right. Number 12. Eastwood didn't like the poster art. When Dirty Harry was ready for release, Warner Brothers wanted a bold, stylized poster to market the film. The result was a dramatic piece of art featuring a jagged font, a distorted image of Clint Eastwood aiming the .44 Magnum, and a splash of design flair that felt more in line with a 1960s acid trip than a gritty police thriller. When Eastwood saw it, he wasn't impressed. He reportedly felt that the poster misrepresented the movie's tone. The character of Harry Callahan wasn't meant to be trippy or abstract. He was grounded, brooding, and dangerous. The vibrant pinks and stylized lettering clashed with the film's raw intensity and cold, realistic tone. Eastwood believed the marketing needed to reflect the seriousness and tension of the story, rather than treating it like a pop art experiment. Over time, alternative posters were created for international markets and later re-releases. These versions toned down the psychedelic look, focusing more on stark imagery and letting the presence of Eastwood and the revolver speak for themselves. Some of the later artwork was much more in line with Eastwood's vision of the film's identity. While fans of vintage movie art may still appreciate the original for its boldness, it's clear that Eastwood himself saw it as a mismatch. For a film about precision and moral weight, the poster seemed to miss the mark. Number 13. There was almost a Dirty Harry action figure. Believe it or not, there was serious discussion at one point about releasing a line of Dirty Harry action figures. In the early 1970s, toy companies began experimenting with figures based on adult characters, aiming to appeal to older children and teenagers. Someone floated the idea of a Harry Callahan doll, complete with trench coat, revolver, and catchphrases. The plan was met with immediate backlash from parents and educators. The idea of a toy that glorified a police officer who regularly stepped outside the law, carried a massive gun, and delivered justice without trial was more than controversial. Parent groups called it tone-deaf. Schools sent letters warning parents. Some went so far as to label it dangerous. The doll never made it past the concept phase. No prototypes were ever released to the public, and any existing sketches were subsequently archived in the studio. Still, the fact that the idea was even floated demonstrates the character's immense power. Harry Callahan wasn't just a role, he was becoming a cultural symbol. Looking back, it's almost surreal to imagine a child opening a birthday present and finding a toy that came with a scowl, a handgun, and a sense of unresolved moral tension. Thankfully, someone in the boardroom realized that maybe this wasn't the kind of hero you packaged in plastic. Number 14. Eastwood kept the gun after filming. The .44 Magnum used by Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry wasn't just a prop. It became an extension of the character. Cold, heavy, and full of purpose. So when filming wrapped, Eastwood didn't just walk away. He kept the gun, not out of vanity, but because he felt it belonged with him. After all, nobody had ever made that weapon more iconic. The studio agreed, allowing him to take the revolver home. For years, it sat in his collection, usually on display in his office or study. Visitors would spot it resting in a glass case or tucked beside framed posters from the film. It wasn't treated like a trophy. It was more like a relic, one that reminded him of the gritty, low-budget production that became a cinematic lightning rod. What's fascinating is that Eastwood never bragged about owning it. He rarely even mentioned it unless someone else noticed it first. He respected the symbolism behind the weapon and didn't see it as just a souvenir. In his mind, that gun represented something larger. It stood for the film's edge, its controversy, and place in American culture. While most props are forgotten after filming, this one remained part of Eastwood's life. It wasn't just a tool from a movie. It was the spine of a legend he helped create. Number 15. Scorpio was originally a cult leader. Before he became a lone lunatic sniper, the character of Scorpio was something very different. In early drafts of the Dirty Harry script, Scorpio wasn't just a serial killer. He was the leader of a cult. The idea was to have him command a group of young, brainwashed followers who helped him orchestrate crimes, spread fear, and challenge law enforcement in a much more organized way. This version of the script leaned heavily into themes of mass hysteria and manipulation. Scorpio was portrayed as charismatic figures, someone who could inspire loyalty despite committing horrific acts. It was meant to reflect the real-world anxieties about cults and counterculture movements during the late 1960s and early 70s. But as the script evolved, the filmmakers realized that Scorpio was more frightening on his own. A lone madman was harder to predict, more chaotic, and less diluted by outside characters. Making him a solitary figure gave the story a tighter focus and allowed audiences to concentrate all their fear and hatred onto one face. The cult angle was abandoned, and Robinson stepped into the reimagined role. It turned out to be the right call. As a lone killer, Scorpio became one of the most memorable villains in film history, not because he led others, but because he acted alone, driven by something nobody could fully understand. Number 16. Seagulls attacked the crew during filming. Filming on location always comes with surprises, but nobody expected the seagulls. One day, while the crew was setting up near the waterfront for a quiet exterior shot, things took a strange turn. Someone from craft services had tossed out leftover food too close to the set. Within minutes, a swarm of hungry seagulls descended like a scene out of a nature documentary gone wrong. At first, it was just a few birds circling overhead. Then they came in fast and low, dive-bombing the equipment and squawking so loudly it drowned out the dialogue. Actors were ducking between takes. Sound guys were covering their gear with jackets. A camera assistant got hit square in the face with bird droppings, and the slate clapper took a peck to the hand. The scene had to be rescheduled. Not because of the weather, not because of the lighting, but because a gang of aggressive seagulls refused to leave. The crew tried everything from fake owl statues to clapping boards in the air, but the birds didn't care. Eventually, they cleared the area with help from some locals who knew how to scare them off. It was a bizarre interruption, but in some ways it fit the unpredictable spirit of Dirty Harry. Even the birds in San Francisco seemed determined to make things difficult for the law. Number 17. The word dirty was a studio compromise. The title Dirty Harry might seem like a no-brainer today, but back in the early days of production it was anything but certain. Studio executives were nervous. The word dirty, they argued, sounded too provocative, too vague, too suggestive. They floated alternative titles such as City Cop and Hard Justice, hoping for something more straightforward to market. But Clint Eastwood and director Don Siegel fought to keep it. To them, the name wasn't just catchy, it captured everything about the character. Harry Callahan was a cop who got his hands dirty, who walked the line between justice and chaos. The name fit him like a worn holster. Still, a compromise had to be made. The studio agreed to the title on the condition that the marketing made it clear this was not a sleazy exploitation film. They wanted the poster and trailer to emphasize action, tension, and the hard moral questions the film raised. In the end, the gamble paid off. The name Dirty Harry became iconic. It was gritty without being vulgar, memorable without being cartoonish. Today, no one questions it, but at the time, the word dirty almost scrubbed the film's identity clean. It was only because Eastwood stuck to his guns, figuratively and literally, that the title survived. Number 18. The Bus Kids were told it was a comedy. The climax of Dirty Harry features a terrifying scene where Scorpio hijacks a school bus full of children. It is one of the most unsettling moments in the film. But here's something most viewers never knew. The kids on that bus were told it was a comedy. Director Don Siegel and the crew knew they couldn't risk traumatizing child actors with the full context of the scene. So instead of explaining the plot, they told the kids it was a silly story about a pirate who takes them on an adventure. Scorpio was introduced to them as a goofy character. Andrew Robinson, to his credit, kept things light between takes, cracking jokes and keeping his distance when in full character. When the cameras rolled, the kids were coached to scream or duck as if they were playing along. They were told it was all part of a game. Most of them didn't even see the gun, as it was carefully angled away during filming. Years later, some of the former child actors admitted they didn't understand the gravity of what they were filming until they saw the movie as adults. What they thought was a playground fantasy turned out to be one of cinema's darkest hostage scenes. Thankfully, the illusion held, and their innocence was protected on set. Number 19. Eastwood learned to shoot from a real cop. To make Harry Callahan's gun handling feel real, Clint Eastwood trained with a veteran San Francisco police officer before filming began. The officer, whose name was kept confidential for privacy, put Eastwood through hours of practice at the shooting range, teaching him how to aim, fire, reload, and carry himself like someone who had been on the job for decades. Eastwood took it seriously. He didn't want Harry to look like an actor playing a cop. He wanted him to move like a man who had lived and breathed police work. That meant everything from how he stood during a standoff to how he checked the chamber of his revolver between shots. The officer later commented that Eastwood was a quick study. He listened more than he spoke and took every correction to heart. By the end of training, he was hitting targets with consistent accuracy. Not only did he look the part on camera, but he became a capable marksman in real life. That dedication helped sell the film's realism. When Harry raises the .44 Magnum and delivers his famous lines, it isn't just theatrical posing. It comes from a place of discipline and precision. That sense of confidence is what made Harry Callahan feel so dangerously real. Number 20. The film was banned in Finland for over a decade. When Dirty Harry hit theaters in 1971, audiences in the United States were captivated. However, not every country shared the same sentiment. In Finland, the government took one look at the film's intense violence and hardline depiction of justice and said absolutely not. The movie was officially banned, making it one of the few American films of the decade to receive such a high level of censorship. The Finnish Film Board cited concerns about excessive brutality, especially in scenes where Harry disregards legal procedure in favor of quick and brutal action. They feared it would send the wrong message to audiences and possibly inspire real-world aggression. For over 10 years, the film remained unavailable in Finnish cinemas. It wasn't until the early 1980s, long after its initial buzz had faded, that the ban was quietly lifted. By then, the film was already considered a modern classic. When it finally aired on Finnish television, it was treated more like a gritty time capsule than a controversial fire starter. Interestingly, once the film became available, it didn't cause the uproar many had expected. Most viewers simply saw it as a tough crime movie from another era. But the fact that it was banned at all speaks volumes about the cultural shockwaves Dirty Harry created and how seriously some nations took its message. Dirty Harry may be over 50 years old, but its legacy remains potent. More than just a cop movie, it sparked debates, inspired imitators, and dared to make audiences uncomfortable. Which of these facts do you find unbelievable? Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.